One Question is designed to give subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown and welcome to One Question. Our guest today is Eric Hyman. Eric is a former athletics director at VMI, Miami, Ohio, TCU, South Carolina, and retired from Texas A&M University. Greetings, Eric. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Ty. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. I'm happy that you are on with us today. Now, you spent 47 years in college athletics. That's as a student athlete, as a coach, and then, of course, in athletics administration. You were director of athletics for 28 years, which, from my perspective, gives you a wealth of knowledge that many people can learn from. I have you on. I want to ask you a couple questions about the ability to be success and have longevity when you serve as a director of athletics. Given the constant external pressures for success that today's athletic directors face, possible litigation, salaries that are off the charts with coaches, the 24-hour news cycle, and a number of other factors, how can athletic directors who are currently in the chair and those who will be in the near future ensure longevity in their leadership roles?
Well, Ty, the first thing I thought about when you asked me the question is you got to stay one step ahead of the posse because they eventually run you out of town and you get in front of them, act like it's a parade.
Right.
It's the challenge of the job. The athletic director's job really has changed dramatically, and because of the money that's now involved, and there's this saying, follow the money. It's gotten to be a very complex, complicated job, and there's a lot of moving parts, and it's sort of like a juggler. And sometimes when one ball gets out of round and out of shape, and it throws off your rhythm, and you have a rhythm. And so you've got an athletic director that's got to maintain that rhythm in the athletic department. And because of the money and the visibility, it's just gotten a lot more difficult than it has been in the past. I know I've talked to CEOs, and we all have similar problems. They have problems and we have problems in athletics, but the difference that separates us from a lot of other people is the layer of visibility. And that causes you to have to think of things and look at things from a different perspective. And somebody told me this a while back, and I've never forgotten it. For example, they said SEC football is a lot like religion, but he said, but half the people aren't faking it. And so it's ingrained in the culture. And based on that, the athletic director has a lot of pressure from a lot of sides. I know having to face some of these challenges, I used to work for a football coach and athletic director by the name of Dick Sheridan, who was one of my mentors. And I watched him operate as the athletic director and a football coach, and the pressure that he was under, the politics. And I sat down one day and I asked him, I said, and I was a real young assistant football coach at the time, I said, well, how do you do it? I mean, you have all these pressures and these external people trying to vie for you and your time and your thought process. And sometimes they're on the edge. What do you do? How do you handle it? And he said, Eric, there's a right way and a wrong way to do things. And he said, I try to do things the right way. And that's sort of been my lighthouse, is I've always tried to do things the right way. And being an athletic director is not necessarily a popularity contest. It's you've got to do the right thing, and that's what I mean until their own self be true. You have to, I feel an athletic director has got to reflect the values of the university and make the main thing, and that's the student athletes. But it's gotten harder over time. And so what I say to for a young athletic director, an athletic director that wants to get into it, it's a different perspective. It's a different time frame. And where when I got into it, coaches were making $100,000 and head football coaches, and they would make the decision on what's in the best interest of student athletes. But today they're making $5 million, $6 million, $7 million, and it's about wealth preservation. They're trying to preserve their wealth. And so the athletic director can't lose sight of the fact of we are in it for the young people. We got to be a difference maker in a young person's life. And because of the money that is involved, it is so different than it has been in the past. So there are, what I found a lot of the challenges, and I pass this on to young people, is that the boards have started now managing your daily activities. but they hold you accountable for the results. And that sometimes puts you in a very difficult situation. And I use the example of South Carolina, which is a little bit different than what I'm saying. But South Carolina, I talked to the board, and I asked them when I first got there, what did they want from a competitive standpoint with their athletic teams? And they said they wanted to be top 25. So that's what we try to do. We try to build a roadmap to get them there, a blueprint to get the desired outcomes of what they wanted was a top 25 program. Well, unfortunately, we didn't have the support internally financially to be able to do it. So we had to make some tough decisions. Like I said, it's not a popularity contest. An athletic director, you have to do the right thing, and you have to make the tough decisions. So we ended up having to reseat the football stadium and have a seat license. Because when we got there, the athletic department was hemorrhaging financially, and we were losing money. And so there's no way in the world we could maintain the desired outcomes of the top 25 program and having the resources that we had. So we ended up having to do this. Well, in the transition of doing this, the board members got a little tight sneakers, and they got a little queasy. And so I went back to the board and I said, listen, if you want to be top 50, I don't have a problem with that. It's be a heck of a lot easier for me. And they said, no. They wanted to be top 25. So in other words, they recentered their thought process and they recommitted to being a top 25. And so then you see where South Carolina is today, but that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't made some of the tough decisions. And so you go into a situation today, and I've worked for 12 presidents, and the presidents there are some phenomenal presidents I've worked for, and unfortunately there are some unethical presidents I've worked for. So it's very difficult today, and it's key when you're in the interview process that you're up front with people, and you don't necessarily tell them what they want to hear, but you tell them who you are and what your goals are and what you think a successful program is and how you go about running it, so there's not any confusion. So because basically sometimes you may not be the best fit, and that's okay. I mean, sometimes people think it's personal, but that's okay, because you're much better off long term and to be a situation where your values are aligned. So another thing I think for young people or athletes, surround yourself with good people, value-centered people that you don't want a bunch of bobbing heads, but you want people that have integrity and they're going to be honest with you and be respectful of you and be able to tell you not necessarily what you want to hear, but what's the best thing to move the program forward. And you've got to have a relationship as an athletic director, have a relationship with people they feel free to be able to explain to you what their thought process is. So what I say real quickly, Ty, in summary to your question, I think, one, you have to do things the right way. I said, number two, you have to surround yourself with people of high character. So, number three, you can't have situational ethics because you're going to be tested. I can give you example after example that if you're not ingrained with your character and your values, then you're going to be tested. And unfortunately, some of those things could bring a lot of ill repute to you and to the athletic department and to the university, which is you don't want to do. I think you got to lead your department on how you live your life. I don't think you can ask others to do things that you're not willing to do. You can't turn around and ask a coach or administrator to stay in a Holiday Inn and save money when you stay in a Ritz-Carlton. You can't do those kind of things. You've got to live your life appropriately. You've got to be able to lead the department. Another very important thing, I think, is there are no secrets. And I always have said to people when I've worked with is, how is this going to play in the headlines of the paper? And so you got to be careful. And I think sometimes you put your head in the sand, hope it goes away. But the reality of it, because it's gotten to be so visible, that you have to be careful and you have to think about how is it going to play in the paper, on the headlines of the paper. And if it doesn't play well, then you're probably doing it the wrong way. And then I think the last thing is, as I said to you before, I think you need to be upfront with people during the interview process. Don't tell them what they want to hear, but tell them who you are, and hopefully through that, and if you're selected as the athletic director or you have a new president or whatever, your values are aligned, because there's going to be some stormy weather. There's going to be some challenging situations. There's going to be some political situations that are going to come up, and you can't bounce around. You have to have a real firm belief on what you stand for, what you represent, and the leadership of the school needs to know and understand it.
And that's part one of our interview with Eric Hyman, former Director of Athletics at VMI, Miami, Ohio, TCU, South Carolina, and Texas A&M. And this is Ty Brown with one question, signing off. This episode of One Question is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.